internal understanding of that concept, whether it is even wearing helmets on Delhi roads, anything, so all of those things require the play of internal and external. And I'm saying that maybe this CSR section 135 provides that external regulatory framework which will allow more companies now to reinforce the internal heart change that is required. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nilima. I must compliment her for her pragmatic approach and the way she's beautifully converted what was supposed to be, even in my personal opinion, a very antagonistic view into an opportunity, saying, okay, it's an external driven regulation. Can I use it as an opportunity and ensure that there is also an internal focus towards it? She also talked about the core purpose of organization, reason why the organization exists, and how it links, talking about army, the command and control of an army, because they have a purpose. They have to deliver versus IT and the kind of, in IT, if you have a command and control, maybe for coders it's fine, but can you then innovate? Possibly you can't. And she also talked about the fact that culture is a function of core purpose of an organization. Now, so I'd like to thank her once again for a very insightful lecture, especially if you even look at the example of Dr. Kurian, a brilliant example saying that, you talk about equality, but then if you have, and you say that it's like, okay, we are also doing some work with government, so there was a recent austerity measure. So they said as part of the austerity measure, we will not do anything in a 5-star. So end result, they're saying we'll go to some government place which requires 60 people to travel. But since it's not supposed to be done in a 5-star, that's acceptable and people will fly. So again, walking the talk. So with this, I would now like to request Dr. Divya. She has a tough task. There have been a lot of illustrious speakers, and after her is the lunch. Before, of course, after that is the question answer followed by lunch.
But as they say, and I think good afternoon, everyone, but there are students here. And they say students know that either the first speaker is the privileged one or the last one gets the privilege of on time. But I'll not extend myself a lot. I'll be crisp. And with the eminent panelists today, I think there are a lot of insights that have got generated on the idea of on the ideas of the values and ethics and CSR, and from being something which is which should be done or which should not be done, and how those things can be balanced. And I'm reminded of something. I mean, I would like to take things a little back and would say in a management education, the entire discussion started from the very fact that what are ethics. And at some point in time, and I had a sharing with Tojo some time back, he said probably my batch was the first one in XLRI who was taught about business ethics or ethics in management. And there was a lot of apprehension and little protest from side of students that why is it important, why is it significant? And then I said, I was reminded of the time when Professor S.K. Chakrabarti established the first center on human values in IIM Calcutta, and in a leading institution was established as a separate center and not as the integral part of the management education. I mean, that speaks volumes about itself, and the push that Professor Chakrabarti had to make in terms of placing it in management education. And some of you here might remember his very basic matrix, which talks about skills and values of managers. And so those are the times when people were still struggling with the concept of ethics in management, values in management. And then I'm reminded of Dr. Subhash Sharma's work, which he started in Banasthali Vidyapith, and I'm the second batch students, and we were given the task of reading on Indian management. And then we were saying, oh God, what is it Indian management, and why are we taught about it? And there was lot of emphasis on human values and Indian values in management processes. And I think there are students, and they would know they have to read a paper on human values in management these days, made compulsory by AICT. And again, there is little apprehension that why we are being told all this. I'm doing this discussion for the reason that the moment you start looking at values and ethics, not as isolated concepts, but the moment you look at them from the viewpoint of CSR, the entire approach to addressing values and ethics in business or in management takes a turn. So that would be my effort to bring out how you would look at values and ethics in terms of CSR, or what is the requirement of CSR when you want to integrate it with business processes in the organization. The discourse on CSR has gone through an immense change. Internationally, there are many initiatives and guidelines which are available, and in India, there's a lot of work which is done in terms of UN Global Compact and GRI reporting initiative, OECD guidelines, SA 8000, and recently there's already, it's now 2 years, and I've been part of the drafting of this standard, which is called as ISO 26000. And this standard has been made with the purpose that any kind of organization, whether small or big, or developing or developed country, NGO or a multinational, all of them can implement CSR by integrating it in their business processes. So there is already a lot of talk which is going on in terms of integrating corporate social responsibility in the value chain and supply chain of the business of the organization. And I would like to share it with the audience here that there are countries which have developed standards which are binding for the companies who are trading with them on CSR, and they have to abide by it when the trade and commerce is being carried out. So there's a lot of apprehension in terms of the trading barrier which would get created in terms of CSR becoming mandatory or being made mandatory by other countries. In Indian context, I would like to say that Ministry of Corporate Affairs first came out with these national voluntary guidelines on social, environmental, and economic responsibilities in order to promote responsible business. And I don't know, hardly it was ever talked or discussed in terms of how it would be integrated. And now, after that initial step, Government of India has come out with this Company Act, wherein in Section 135 it has been made mandatory. And to just look at what Nilima said from a different point of view, or to supplement it, I would say that we all have been following at one point in time or the other, like ISO 9001, like ISO 14000, and we adopted it, we followed or abided by it. Probably here's a chance or an opportunity for us to use this, something which has become mandatory, as an opportunity to channelize our personal social responsibility, the phrase that has been used by Dr. V.P. Singh here. And that would help us in bringing something which is which has a large magnitude and something which is very individual and personal. So probably the reconciliation is possible through this particular act which has come out now. After this discussion, I'd like to bring 4 or 5 points to you. And first one is in terms of understanding that CSR is not a subject to be managed or administered. Rather, it is a basis that contributes to sustainable development and therefore to the society. Hence, the programs for social responsibility can be managed, but not social responsibility as such. And that leads to 2 domains, wherein first is the government side, which comes in terms of political will and the legislative support. And second is in terms of commitment from corporate's side. And I have all my panelists from different companies, and probably they would understand the significance of it, that it requires commitment in formulation, implementation, and execution of CSR policy, and sincerity in freedom towards framing CSR policies and schemes. So it's not about tweaking the wings of the bird so that it doesn't fly, but allowing the bird itself and enabling the bird to fly in the open sky of business. The second point is, and this is most of the times I have heard from different people in different forums, that when it's the recession time, CSR is the first thing that gets curtailed, or the investment is curtailed on the CSR aspects. I think there is a little change which needs to be done, and it is important to understand and that can there be a backup from good times for recessionary times regarding CSR? And this I have brought out in one of my papers on wisdom wealth of India in terms of ethos of Indian management, wherein we have always said that save something when the times are good so that you can continue with them when the times are a little low. So I would say this because CSR is being still looked at as an add-on activity or activities that are other than business of the organization itself. But imagine, and I'm giving you an alternate imagination, what will happen if CSR is seen as part of business activities, its supply chain, value chain, and people management? Then the entire business, even in the recession period, goes into the domain of human, social, sustainable activity instead of being called as depleting profit activity. And probably it would be a time when company can still keep up with its brand image which it creates during good times. The third aspect is that there is a subtle transition in the economy, and I think everyone is already aware, but I would like to say that this subtle transition from socialist mindset to capitalist mindset in last 20 years is something which is going to impact our definition of welfare, profit, and the balance of the two. And so we will have to give each other a little time and opportunity to understand that how these two things would arrive at certain equilibrium in this new set of economy or the change in economy which has taken place. The fourth aspect is the diversities in execution of social responsibility in manufacturing sector and service sector. And I think we had a speaker in the morning, Mr. Rajiv Kapoor, who talked about the difference in basic structure and the functioning or the approach of service sector companies and the manufacturing sector companies. And so we have to understand that the models of CSR which would emerge from manufacturing sector are going to be very different from the